I'm really excited to be doing this tutorial because we're getting down into the Money Smarts section of the MyWealth portal. Now remember, you've got your manual, sent you your manual, so make sure you get familiar with that because this is obviously the full manual in terms of how to get the maximum out of your Money Smarts setup. But I'm going to share with you how you can maximize the introduction piece to what is Money Smarts. So here we are. We've got Daniel and Rebecca, who was our tutorial clients, and I'm going to click on Money Smarts, and that's going to take you across to your Money Smarts section of the portal. Now you can see in here, we talk about money in, we talk about money out, and when we talk about the targeted annual surplus. So this is important because that's what we're going after. So we've got that as an annual snapshot, and then we've also got that as a monthly snapshot. Now this little arrow here can bring up a nice little summary that will document all of that money in, and this one here is going to document all of the money out in terms of all the expense items, whether they be bills or also expenses or spending as attached to that. So, and obviously we've got what's called a sundial or sunblast graphs. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. They're pretty self-explanatory as you move around them. They basically give you the information on an annualized basis. Now, remember, Money Smarts works on a classic jar system. Okay, so we're talking about the primary account. In this particular case for Daniel and Rebecca, it's a savings, but we would want that as an offset account for all of us as we set it up. Okay, so in your Money Smarts system, we've learnt, obviously through the book, pages 46 is a nice little diagram in terms of the banking setup, but also on page 98 and 99, I'll just go to those now, you can also see a nice big diagram how money flows through. So get familiar with those two diagrams, and there's also a guide that we have on the site which will also highlight those diagrams as well. So as a quick reference for you as well. So what do we know? We know that the primary account is the main account, and you can see the money coming in and the money going out. Now the money out of the primary account goes out to the living and lifestyle jar, the credit card jar, the direct payments jar, which you remember that's a virtual jar because it lives inside the offset because that's direct payments. And then you've got the loans jar, which is money going out for all your loans. And then the provisioning jar, which we'll spend a bit more time talking about because that's the only one we really need to track. And that's why it only takes less than 10 minutes a month to do. Now you can see there's the monthly surplus, and that is a summary of your master account. Now we're going to move down into the living and lifestyle, and you can see a couple of key things here. Firstly, your weekly living and lifestyle, your 7-day float, it automatically calculates that. So that's the money, and we talk about paying you on the Thursday before the weekend. That's the money you should set up to pay yourself on that Thursday. Now that's the monthly amount, but that is the weekly amount that we want you to start paying those regular payments on. Now what's inside that? Simply click on the button for the drop down, and that will show you all of the money that's been allocated for regular payments for you in terms of on that weekly basis. You routinely make these payments, and that's why that money's been provisioned. That's why we don't have to track it. Okay, so you then know that if you run out of money, you're potentially consciously overspending, and that's going to impact on your surplus. So that is the living and lifestyle jar. In terms of the credit card jar, you can start to see where those credit card expense items are placed. Now remember, we only spend on fixed bills. Bills that we know are going to be paid plus our fuel is the only thing we put on the credit card. Now you will be tempted. You will be tempted to potentially tap and go with your credit card when you don't have any money, but that's how they suck you in, and that's how you lose your surplus because you are not maintaining the regime and what the system's meant to do. Remember, Money Smarts is a rules-based system that works as long as you follow the rules. So we see here that they're all the expense items, and that will be auto-swept to get that interest-free period on your credit card. More of those details, again, in your manual if you don't understand what auto-sweep means and how you maximize the benefit of the bank's money through your 55-day interest-free credit card. Direct payments, if we've got any direct payments, in other words, it's not feasible to pay them on the credit card because they charge extra fees or you get a discount for paying with direct debit. This is why you would have a direct debit jar. Then you also have the loans jar, and you can see those loan repayments coming out of the loans jar. Now, remember, virtual jars inside the one account. We don't need multiple accounts. You don't need to, set up all these different bank accounts. You'll drive you crazy. Just basically have it all in the one primary account. Obviously, the living and lifestyle is a secondary account. So now we're looking at the provisioning jar. Now inside the provisioning jar, these are the expense items that we need to track because they're irregular, okay? But we're also, over the 12-month time frame, we've said we're going to spend this money over that time frame. So you can see, here's some examples in regards to we've already spent some of our money. Now, if I wanted to edit that, when I check in at the end of the month, I can add things like flights to Sydney. I can do all different types of things in terms of what that looks like, and you can see those previous flights that I've added. And then if you add those, you can then delete them by using this delete column here as well. So simply add, you click the add button, and that will give you the add amount. So you can add that in and record that and then hit the save button. And once you hit the save button, that will then register as an expense item that you're doing. Then you've got car maintenance, whatever you choose to do. Now, you're probably wondering why it's taking me this long to explain to you, well, how do I get those items into each of the different categories? Well, you do that over here in the expense area. So if I've got spending by way of example, so I come over here and you can see I've got things like holidays. Because holiday has been provisioned for, that's why it appears there. So if I was to change this category crazily, and you would never do this, but let's say you put it into living and lifestyle and I hit save, okay, and I go back into Money Smarts and I save that, all right, and I go back in here, all of a sudden my living and lifestyle, you can start to see the holiday expenditure going in here. Now, because that is a monthly out, it's $250 of the $3,000 that we set. So of course we don't want holidays in there, but that's exactly how you move things around. So we'll go and reset that back, go back into spending, and depending on again which category you use, so we go down to holidays, put that back for provisioning for, so that'll go back into provisioning for, and then you'll also then see that back in the Money Smarts. We save that and we'll be back down here in provisioning. Now, what you will notice that because we changed that, we lost all the history. All right, so that's why you want to make sure that you are keeping the provisioning jar true to it being ad hoc spending, and that's why holiday should never go in there. And because I hit the save button, the system automatically reset that for us. So that's a tip for beginners. Don't be playing around with your provisional jar if you're already underway in terms of running your Money Smart system. Now, Money Smarts is all about checking in at the end of each month. And there's two things we need to do. We need to have a start date, and then we also then need to check in on our primary bank account that we add the balance in. So we put the date, the month, and the balance, the starting balance, and then what was, that closing balance. All right. So once we get that, the starting balance, and then also the closing balance, plus the closing balance of the credit card, the system does all the heavy lifting for you in terms of and again, if I show you the tables for those people who are interested in tables, and there's detailed information in here around what all of those definitions are in regards to the information that we have in here around the systems and the tables and how all they work, and also the definitions. So they're also available in the book for you. And then we've got the tracking, okay, in terms of how you're progressing, what months you've been up, what months you've been down. Because the critical part about this is that if you have this is why budgets again don't work. If you have lots of spending in 1 month, then you might feel like your budget is blown, but it's not blown. It just means that the rest of those months over that 12-month cycle are going to readjust. And that's what this system is designed to do in terms of all the technical pieces. You don't have to worry too much about that. All you've got to do is stick to your living and lifestyle and make sure you are checking out monthly. And at less than 10 minutes a month, you put those two statements in, You add any of the spending that's been ad hoc and make a record of that. That's why it only takes 10 minutes. And once you've saved that, you have your summary and your update in regards to how you're progressing on the accumulated actual surplus. Now, of course, this particular model that I've built before, I've lost all of those holiday spends, so that's why it's looking even better than what it is. But once I reload all of those holiday spends back in, you'll get a sense of what's going on. And that is Money Smarts. That's it. That's all it is. It is so simple to operate. You go and allocate your expense items inside here. Now, another important tip. We have preset default categories in terms of Money Smarts categorizations for all the preset defaulted expense items that are listed in the system. So if you're not sure where to start, then just don't change the Money Smarts categorizations. Just start with those and get familiar with that. And read the book. The book is helpful. It'll get you started in terms of where you need to be. And that is the introduction to Money Smarts. Go on, get in there and kick the tires on it. Have a go. In our next tutorial, I'm going to be talking about Money Fit, which might give you that little bit of motivation to get started. Cheers.